Today, I'm excited to welcome Josh and Paul from Pack This to Totally Music to chat about their musical career. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Josh. I'm kind of the composer and guitarist from Pack This.
Hi, my name's Paul, and I'm the singer from Pack This.
Great to have you on. So, how did Pack This come together as a band, and what was the initial vision for your music?
Um, so Pack This kind of had two main phases, really. So the first phase was a period of about 10 years where I was just composing kind of music on my own. And I kind of had this vision for it being played with a band at some point. But then very recently, it kind of all materialized in the last, what was it, 2 years, Paul, that we've sort of been
Yeah, about a year and a
doing,
half, 2 years.
year and a half, 2 years. Yeah. And I I talked to the drummer from another band that I'm in, Damien. He's awesome, and he was interested in the music. And then my friend Jim, who I've known for absolutely donkey's years, he's a keyboardist and like a multi instrumentalist, really, actually. And he was really keen to give the keys a go. And then somehow we managed to find TJ on bass, and uh, and then
No one knows
Paul
quite
came.
how he started turning up, do we? But he did.
No, and then
Yeah,
you knew Paul. You knew TJ, didn't you? He got in
I did
contact with you.
indeed. Yeah,
Yeah,
so he'd put out a message saying they were looking for a singer, and I was like, I'll have a listen to TJ's new band. And I had a listen to one song, and I was like, this is pretty good. And then I listened to the next couple of songs. I was like, actually, this is really good. So straight away, I'm right in contact with TJ and see if I can get on board. And did a little I did a little demo for you. I think stood about 2 meters away from where I'm sitting right now, and
yeah,
yeah,
that was it.
we connected and
Yeah,
got together in the room, didn't we?
yeah. I mean, there was no hesitation about Paul joining us as soon as he sent through a video of him singing. I think it was "The Wood and the Trees." Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I liked what he was doing there, and it all just kind of came together in a way that I'd never imagined it would. So that's kind of how the band came about.
And how did you come up with the name Pack This?
Well, it's a little reference to a very obscure film um, that my father and I are big fans of. And one day I remember just thinking, is you know how people just tend to spout quotes at each other because that's the in joke. Well, that was a quote between me and my dad, and one day I just thought that's actually pretty funny. And that, to be fair, that is often the way songs get named is just really bad puns that amuse me, um, as well as the band name. So yeah, that's where it came from as a film reference.
Love it. Can you describe your songwriting process?
Um, yeah, so I think for me, when I'm composing these days, it tends to start. I think most of the band would agree it doesn't necessarily sound like it's been written by a guitarist. I tend to
Mm.
try and think of it more as a sort of more of a composition and arrangement. So, for example, when you hear me, if you hear my parts in isolation, even though I would say we're kind of metal rock band, sometimes it's literally just me going just like the most stupid.
That's one of my
I was
favorite
rehearsing.
parts of yours, Josh. Don't
Oh,
knock it.
I was rehearsing with Damien, just us two, one day, just to kind of smarten things up, and he was just absolutely cracking up because he had never actually heard me on my own before because he's used to hearing it as the band, and he was like, "Is that actually what you do?" So I suppose what I'm trying to say is I tend to think of it more as an arrangement rather than kind of approaching from a guitar perspective. And it's often sort of based around chords and harmony. That's how I tend to approach things. Um, and then with Paul getting involved, we're trying to focus much more on the melodic side of things and getting the vocals really nailed for when we start recording the new album.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually when you sit there as someone who wasn't part of the songwriting process and listen to it, and you anticipate a certain approach from someone who's a heavy metal guitar player, but actually every song feels like it's a like a for a little mini orchestra, which I really like. There's no ego really in the way that Josh writes. It's very much about what's going to sound right for the song. So that's given me a lot of understanding around how I want to approach the vocal parts that he put on the first couple of records, and how we're approaching any further stuff that we're doing at the moment.
So what's your favourite song you've written and why?
Um, well, I like I like listening to the music that I've recorded. I think it's healthy to do that. Uh, Different songs for different needs, really. Um, I think that I think my favorite song to play at the moment is probably BTN, which is track one off the second album, just because I feel like it's quite sort of punchy and sort of represents more or less kind of what we do as a band,
Yeah.
what we sound like. We haven't gigged much yet, but when we did that one gig recently, we put that on as our second song, and it just feels like it's got this kind of vibe to it, this sort of uprising of energy. And yeah, I think that represents, you know, my vision for the band, BTN.
Absolutely encapsulates a lot of what the band's about, really, that song. So yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites as well. I'd say I've gone through different favorites over time, like because I probably listened to the albums as much as you have, Josh, because I spent a good time trying to work out which ones I was going to pitch to get in the live set. And for
Yeah,
me, Daffodil was a really important one for. I think I pushed a little bit to get that played, didn't I? And now it's one
yeah,
I couldn't imagine us playing more shows without it. Yeah,
yeah.
really
I
nice
do
song.
like Daffodil as well, and that's an example of a song that I Daffodil of a song that I always wanted to work live as well.
Mm.
Again, there's just kind of energy to it, which I really like. And speaking of pitch as well, actually, I think BTN is one of Paul's best songs, just because the pitch range is just right in your sweet spot, and it just
Mm.
yeah, he absolutely kills it every time he sings it. It's great.
Oh, thank you. I'll say that.
So what's been your most rewarding moment in your musical career so far?
Musical career. Well, playing that gig a couple of weeks ago was a real sweet moment for me, because without banging on about it too much, there was a lot of years that went into creating what there is now, and it was just such a wonderful thing for me on a personal level for it to come alive and be able to share it in this really lovely way. And it was so nice that there's a band playing with me, and you guys seem to really enjoy it. I don't feel like anyone's doing it begrudgingly. Because it is, it is music that I've created, and you guys have kind of digested and helped bring it to life. So it's kind of, I imagine there isn't as much emotional weight to it as there is for me. um, but yeah, that was a real highlight for me, playing that live gig recently.
Absolutely. I would just say though, I don't think that, yeah, fair enough, you've got your own emotionality attached to it, but for me, I've come to a place in my musical output where I really appreciate playing material that is driven by a level of vulnerability, like heavy material that's driven by vulnerability. And the music I'm playing in the bands I'm playing in now, and Pack This is a really good example of that. That vulnerability does shine through, particularly in the choices in the lyrics. And yeah, it's it's an interesting challenge to be able to bring those lyrics to life in a way that are true to the vision of what you recorded on the records, and also bring as much of myself to it as I can as well to be able to truly perform it. So
Yeah, and I would say that Paul has definitely done that really well so far. I don't know if you know, but we're working on a third album at the moment, but just as an intermediary thing, we released on SoundCloud a couple of um, tracks that are already out, but we put Paul's vocals on it instead of mine, and it was really cool. Just that experience of recording it in the studio, and Paul interpreting the songs and kind of putting his spin on it, and I think it works really well actually. And they are on, I think they're still on SoundCloud at the moment.
Unless we've done something wrong with SoundCloud, I think it should still be up there.
Yeah.
So you may have kind of already answered this before, but what's your favourite song to perform live and why?
Well, when we played the other day, I enjoyed playing everything, but one that what I particularly got a kick out of was this song called Kufunga Sisa, which is it's probably the most technically demanding song for everyone, including myself. And yeah, it was just exciting to give it a go, really. You know, to challenge yourself with musical material, I think is a healthy thing.
Absolutely a really fun one to play. Yeah, there's 4 different like versions of the chorus in there, and everyone's in a different key. And whenever we like it is mentally confusing, but so enjoyable to nail. And also when we started getting those harmonies really, really richly in the rehearsal room in the last couple of months before we started taking them out into shows, and yeah, it comes across really well. I love that. I'm really looking forward to playing Turn It Off as well. We didn't get a chance because we ran out of time, but Turn It Off is probably the anthemic one, like the one of the most accessible tracks on the record, I would say, and I think it's going to go down really well live when we actually get a chance to play it.
Yeah, I think so too. Certainly written that way to try and appeal in that kind of way. Paul used the word anthemic very cavalierly then. But yeah, I know what he means. I know what he means.
Cool. So if you could perform anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
If I could perform anywhere in the world, I think just out of being able to say it happened, probably Wembley Stadium, because it's just such an iconic thing. You probably get people saying that all the time, but it's like it's the most iconic venue in the UK, or one of them. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Nice.
I imagine the sound is atrocious though.
Essentially. Now, I think for me, I've always been appealed by the Red Rocks Amphitheatre out in America. I don't know if you've ever looked it up, but yeah, it's just a beautiful looking venue.
Is that the one with the sort of steps that go down?
Yeah,
yeah.
And I had for a while I was very much into the Grateful Dead, like, and you know they've got 30 years of of bootlegs, and every like you'd hear the ones at Red Rocks, and you'd just be like, God, it just takes it to another level. And I started looking at pictures and videos of places, of people playing there. I saw footage of King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard playing there recently, actually, and it just seems like such a great atmosphere. You know, like how art was meant to be engaged with, like on a primal level as like a community thing. And I love places like that. So
yeah, it's like a coliseum almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I really like that place we played in the other day, because it was such a tiny little room, but it forced everyone like into that kind of community space. And yeah, it was really wonderful.
It certainly brought something primal out of people for good or worse. Yeah.
And so finally, what's next for you?
Well, as I say, we're working on the 3rd album, so that's still material that I've composed and currently recording all the bass for at the moment. But it's more collaborative now with Paul being part of that process. He's going to be there recording the vocals and putting his shine on things. And to be honest, I imagine I'll probably be collaborating a lot more with our drummer Damien, who's an amazing producer as well, and he'll probably be giving the input as well on how the tracks are going. But in terms of just moving forward, I mean, it's a relatively new venture as a band, and I think when I initially tried to put the band together, my mission statement, I think it really encapsulated where I was at with my life generally was, let's just get a gig. Let's get one gig. Let's get a gig in Brighton and we'll see how we go from there. It wasn't focused on world dominance by any stretch of the imagination. So I suppose where I would like to see things going is definitely getting more gigs in the southeast of England, maybe even a festival gig. I think TJ jokingly said we should apply to Glastonbury, but it's not the southeast. Yeah, that's kind of my vision for the moment. You know, just humble beginnings. What do you think, Paul?
Well, for me, I just want to keep playing more shows and putting this music out to people and letting people experience it in the way that I got to. You know, like to engage with music that I think is it's really good, mate. I don't know if I've told you, but I quite like the songs. Like, so yeah, just giving people an opportunity to see how they feel about it in that live setting, because live music is such a powerful thing, and getting to see bands, like you say, humble beginnings, play the shows of their lives in be it little pubs or 200-seater clubs or wherever you get to is such a joy. So I'm just happy to be a part of that journey with this band.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, you know, one of the things I wanted to do was just play some of the more the slightly bigger venues in Brighton. My dream was to play the Prince Albert at some point with my own music, and we're playing the Prince Albert in March. So I couldn't be happier really with where things are going right at this moment. It's really exciting.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to following your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So a massive thank you to Pack This for joining me on Totally Music. If anyone would like to check out the music, I'll leave all the links in the description below for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.